Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Michael Brooks was the main inspiration for me starting my channel, Left of the Box. Since starting my channel, what I've learned about myself, what I've learned I'm capable of, has changed and, in a real sense, saved my life. People who watch my channel have told me how I've touched their lives, how I helped them to understand themselves better, how I motivated them to get involved. I wish so much I had the chance to tell Michael this, to thank him for everything he's done for me. On July 20th, 2020, he passed away suddenly from a medical issue. I never knew I could miss someone I never met so much. I wanted to honor his memory by reading his book, Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right, and then share with you what I got from it in the form of, I guess you could say, a book review. And in doing so, I realized Michael is still helping me to grow and become a better person. This is the part of the video where I tell you to hit some buttons and share. I show you all of the different platforms you can find me on. And I point out I have a wish list that you can purchase things on to help me build my studio, and I have a Patreon. Sign up for it and receive bonus stuff like behind the scenes videos about my art, answers to questions, and so on. Eventually that will definitely be a thing on my Patreon. And check out my website, sandylovis.com. A special note, after this video, head over to the Letterhack's channel where we'll be live for a talkback about the book. Links to the stream are in the description box and in the chat. I'll also be hanging out in the chat with y'all. If I'm monetized by then, please send in super chats and I'll respond to them in the live stream on Letterhack's channel. Full disclosure, I have no idea what I'm doing. I haven't written a book review and let's just say it's been a while. So what I did was make notes on each chapters of points that stuck out to me and my thoughts on them. I'll conclude by applying what I've learned to what is happening today. To help me with this presentation is the audiobook version voiced by the one and only Sam Cedar. My overall impressions of the book. It was easy to read and digest. He used humor and his personal experiences with people to get his points across. Being on the shorter size for a book is helpful, but also he didn't load it with the academic arrogance I'm so used to hearing from others tackling the same subjects. Basically, I didn't feel like I was being talked down to. He hit on plenty of stuff I don't know and had to look up. I'll admit it, I'm not well read on political theory, like, not even a bit. However, he was able to frame what he was talking about in ways I could understand, and he left a trail of other books and articles to read for if I ever have the patience to read anything other than horror. The most impressive thing about the book is Michael could have written it yesterday, and it'd still be as relevant as when he wrote it. Even though the primary subject matter is the intellectual dark web, IDW, which hasn't been prominent in the political space for years. He does this by breaking down what made them popular and how those same tactics are in use today. In fact, he points to a broader pattern within politics that has been playing out for decades. Against the Web is a great book to start with if you want to have a better understanding of right versus left and the underlying issues holding the left back. Chapter 1, Meet the New Right, the Intellectual Dark Web and Capital's Contradictions. Michael details how the people on the right accusing the political left of being more powerful and influential than it actually is nothing new. The way the right engages with this has changed over the years, but their objective has remained consistent. For a small group of people, white cishet men, to take and keep power. If reality doesn't help that goal, they twist it to suit their needs. If the truth doesn't help, they lie. They accuse the left of trying to silence them and hold them back. That they, the right, are the ones with the solutions, but the evil left doesn't want people to know, because if they did, they would lose all the power they have. Like, controlling the weather, changing kids gay, or erasing their freedoms through the dark forces known as socialism. The right is both the victim of these nefarious leftist plots and the saviors to suffering people. The right's primary tool for all of this is the illusion of intelligence. They hunger to be something they're not without putting in the work to earn it, or accepting it's not the part for them to play. Case in point, Dave Rubin. He's desperate to come across as smarter than he is with his high-level ideas, because the right puts emphasis into appearing smart. Being smart is not required. You see this in their branding, intellectual dark web. One of them goes by the cool kids philosopher. Prager University, everything about Elon Musk. They make documentaries and brag about their credentials, even if their credentials they never earned. They go to committees and claim their intelligence gives them the authority to speak on issues they never studied, like Matt Walsh testifying at a health committee.
Can you give us a summary of your educational background or your healthcare education experience?
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
My experience in healthcare?
Your educational background. I'm just curious. You've testified as to a lot of your own research, so I'm curious for what purpose you do that and what background you have to qualifies you to speak to that.
Well, my background
Walsh.
that qualifies me to speak to this is that I'm a human being with a brain.
Hey, Matt, you're not supposed to lie while giving testimony.
I did, now it's true, I didn't go to college, but I did go to school long enough to learn how to read, so I can read the data for myself, and that's exactly what I've done.
However, being an intellectual on the right has little meaning when they include people like Dave. And I mean that he's not smart and he's bad at faking it. The main people on the right are good at performing that they're intelligent while claiming not to be part of the establishment, which I feel is more relatable to their audience who maybe don't have the means to get an education, or their bubble is so anti-woke, education is seen as a bad thing. But they want to feel like they're the ones who know the truth about everything and have all the answers. One of the ways they demonstrate their intelligence is through hypotheticals and thought experiments. Michael takes a deeper look at this in Chapter 2. Intelligence is an ongoing theme in Michael's book. I understand the sensitivity around using words like intelligent and dumb. I'm autistic and have been called every synonym for stupid out there. The reason the language is important for the context of this book is due to the right's weaponization of intelligence to maintain white supremacy and capitalism. It's their primary tool in the culture war. To them, being smarter means being superior.
Saying that culture war skirmishes have the effect of distracting us from the economic forces that lie at the root of our problems is true enough, but it's also not enough. The mistakes, excesses, and wrongs of the performatively ultra-woke can't be combated with economic analysis alone. Culture matters.
This quote struck a chord with me. So often the phrase culture war is used to dismiss real concerns. I'm non-binary and queer. Saying LGBTQ+ issues should be ignored because they're part of the culture war and we need to focus on things that really matter like healthcare is to say my existence is disposable for the greater good. However, my right to live as who I am is tied to healthcare, economics, and everything else people consider is worth fighting for. Culture matters. If we separate the culture war and the class war and put all of our resources into one, we'll lose both. And as Michael points out, it's bigger than us and the so-called West. Social equality can't exist locally when we rely on human rights abuses in other places to maintain it. This is why the struggle for human dignity has always been fragmented. All of us, me, you, have no choice but to live in a society that functions because of the exploitation of people here and in other countries. If we were to eliminate all the abuses here, but not elsewhere, the systems that allowed our current situation to evolve remain in place and will eventually take back what it's lost. The right networks and learns from successful tactics in other countries. Capitalism is global and works across borders. Surprisingly, fascism has the whole cosmopolitan thing figured out. The left and socialism need to do the same. Chapter 2. The history is completely irrelevant. In this chapter, Michael focuses on Sam Harris and how his use of thought experiments is ahistorical, aren't used to test values, wouldn't play out in reality, and are self-serving. Basically, Sam creates scenarios to justify his horrible beliefs, then uses the guise of thought experiment to release himself of accountability. The example used by Michael is Sam's infamous thought experiment. We should be able to torture people to stop a nuclear attack. All this thought experiment does is expose Sam's racism and desire to remove perceived threats through violent means. Many in the IDW want to eliminate potential problems in the future by eliminating the source, instead of, work to prevent the issues in the first place through diplomacy, sacrifice, compassion, equality, and so on. They use thought experiments not to compare ideas, but to justify and pacify people into believing the devastation they want to unleash is reasonable. And since they want to solve problems by bombing people they label as a threat, they believe that's what others want to do to them. I hazard to guess most people don't want to see others suffer and die for ideological causes. I worry this bomb problems mentality plays a part as to why capitalist governments aren't making meaningful changes to combat climate change. When the time comes, the governments that are primarily responsible for climate change know they can survive by taking what they want from other countries through force. They are more willing to sacrifice millions of people than they are to sacrifice their power. Michael goes over the trolley problem we've all seen memes of, and how and why it's changed from its original version. I'll touch more on my thoughts about thought experiments in my further thoughts at the end. The right manipulates thought experiments to make the outcomes they want seem more legitimate. That's not the only thing the right manipulates. Their illusion of intelligence is, again, their primary tool. When talking about the book The Bell Curve, Michael wrote,
It's worth underlining that the bell curve attempts to justify extreme inequality of all kinds as a result of natural forces. The book is, in many respects, the ultimate example of the intellectually limiting and morally damaging effects of naturalizing instead of historicizing.
Even though the bell curve has been debunked over and over, the damage remains. People still use it to claim superiority over others due to being naturally more intelligent based on race. They say this with no comprehension that by doing so, they expose themselves as not being intelligent and are only willing to take in information that serves as confirmation bias, no matter how provably false it is. Chapter 3. The Dragon Who Didn't Do His Homework. Jordan Peterson. Yeah. On behalf of Canada? Sorry. I had a really hard time getting through this chapter with the audiobook because I couldn't stop giggling at Sam Cedars' impressions of Jordan Peterson.
I can envision a student or a colleague insisting that I call them using gender-neutral pronouns. Z or zer.
In this chapter, Michael uses Jordan as the ultimate example of do as I say and not as I do, unless I say do as I do and not as I say. Jordan rose to fame after lying about Bill C-16, claiming Canada was trying to police our speech by forcing people to respect others' pronouns. Canada absolutely has language laws. Go to Quebec, start a business, advertise only in English. See how long that lasts. However, no one has gone to jail for misgendering. The former university professor and soon-to-be former psychologist will claim to have whatever credentials are needed to sound like he has any authority to speak on the subject at hand. Jordan's most notable book is 12 Rules for Life. Michael points out which of these rules are decent enough general self-help messaging and which of the rules Jordan himself doesn't follow. The right often goes against their stated principles when they think it will help to push their ideological agenda. Yep, you guessed it. They lie. Free speech is a must, unless you say something they don't like. Bodily autonomy is a must, unless you do something they don't like. Small government is a must, unless big government can deliver them what they like. The right says that they're all about freedoms, but embrace authoritarians here and around the world. Everything the right does is designed to enforce patriarchy and white supremacy, which is toxic to everyone, including the mainly young white men it gives privilege to. Only a small group of people truly benefit from the system, and to maintain it, they need to keep men angry, aggressive, believing they're entitled to unearned privilege, that they are naturally dominant, and that only rigid gendered standards will let them achieve their rightful place in society. Here is where Michael touches on one of his criticisms of the left: the need to support and give alternatives to white men. This paragraph in his book was bolded to emphasize how important it is.
One of the most dangerous things the left can do is to write off the demographic to which Peterson appeals because of its relative racial and gender privilege. For one thing, setting all else aside, young and angry white men have historically been a pretty dangerous group. They are the subset of the population most likely to become school shooters or join fascist movements. Far better that someone addresses their alienation in a constructive way and channels their justified frustration in a positive direction.
We can't move forward while leaving one group behind. White men have a role to play in our advancement. If all we do is mock them, tell them they don't deserve kindness, say their privilege gives them an easy life, the men who are struggling, who are hurt, who have been harmed, who are in need of support, will look elsewhere. People like Jordan tell them he has all the solutions, when in reality the advice he gives them is meant to keep them where they are, serving the patriarchy at the cost of their happiness. All the self-help advice Jordan gives in the end fails his audience because it doesn't correct the underlying problems. And that's by design. Keeping men broken keeps them obedient and believing the lies they're being told. There's only so much a person can do to help themselves, but if they remain stuck in a toxic, broken, abusive system, they'll never be healthy. We on the left have to offer better alternatives to everyone trapped in this system. Chapter 4: Ben Shapiro and Other Dishonorable Mentions. Ben Shapiro is the one and only cool kids philosopher, but in reality, he's just a bigot. Michael explains how Ben reinvents history and talks about the glory of Western civilization, but neglects to mention the part of the religious collaboration, Judeo-Christian, that created Western civilization as we know it, includes people who relentlessly persecuted Jewish people and most likely still would if given the chance. But Ben is perfectly happy to be part of a group that, if their goals were to be achieved, he would be, let's just say, feeling a little less secure with his ability to exist in society. Basically, what he wants done to LGBTQ plus folks would be done to him. Ben isn't the only prominent person on the right in this category. Re-enter Dave Rubin. Married to a man and has children via surrogate, is currently learning the hard but very predictable way that he was only being accepted so long as he served their agenda. The reason Dave has had success, despite his lack of ability to think critically, is he serves a purpose. He's a tool. He can't independently sustain his career. Now that he's losing his usefulness, he's finding that the tolerant right he loved to promote ain't so tolerant. I will never understand why some people are so desperate to be part of groups that hate them so much. Sure, the money may be good, but that money won't buy back their dignity. Oh, sorry. My bad. He didn't have any dignity to start with. Michael goes into another criticism of the left. One I couldn't agree with harder.
Even when it comes to characters as contemptible as Ben Shapiro, I don't think people should be condemned for positions from which they've truly moved on. Absolutely unforgivable pasts are few and far between, and our default reaction to people rejecting bad views should be to encourage their growth. The failure by some on the left to recognize that we should encourage moral growth instead of shaming and canceling people for having gotten things wrong in the past is a big part of the phenomenon Mark Fisher brilliantly described in his essay, Exiting the Vampire Castle.
Restorative justice is a pillar in progressive values. But how can one believe in restorative justice if they refuse to forgive people for something they said or did in their past? I've seen people who claim to have these values drudge up the same comments someone made a while back and use the same out-of-context clips to attack him and try to turn others against him. Sure, this person still has problematic behaviors, but constantly attacking him instead of working with him to improve doesn't help the cause. Yes, I'm sub-video essaying other video essayers. I'm not going to get into it here. This video isn't about this particular person. However, it's an excellent example of people on the left eating their own. If people want to know specifically what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments and I'll make a separate video about it. I've said and done things in the past that have harmed people. Things I'm not proud of. I'm not that person anymore. If people were to associate me solely with those things and not all the work I've done to change, it would be easy to hate me, to use me as a target to gain clout, to feel morally superior, punishing me for something I've already been punished for. It would shut me down, shrink my reach, and keep my perspectives out of the conversation. How is it helping the cause when we do that to people who are acting in good faith? We need more voices speaking out, not less. There's so much in this chapter I want to quote. Just buy the book. I'll try to sum up what Michael said. There's a deficit of empathy of people on the left when it comes to one another, and as long as we fixate on these inner conflicts, we'll continue to fail at gaining power. These inner conflicts have more to do with individuals seeking status, wanting to look like they're doing something righteous rather than putting the work into actions that are righteous, because actions have consequences and can be challenging. For many, it's safer to get mad at superficial things to fill their need of feeling like they're doing something meaningful without fear of sacrifice, when in actuality, it's holding all of us back. Chapter 5, Beyond the IDW.
We need a material analysis, buttressed with a sense of humor and a recognition of human fallibility, that connects the fight for a better world to the immediate interests of the majority of the population.
That is who Michael Brooks was. When conflicts come about, we need to be aware of what we're fighting against. Be mindful of the outcomes you want. We need to work together as a whole while understanding, even though we may have diverging economic and social interests, we're still one on this planet. There should be no artificial lines between cultures. Everyone should be free to enjoy and benefit from arts, ideas, music, and the like from different people around the world without fear of losing what makes us unique. When everything is labeled as leftist infighting or as cultural appropriation, it detracts from the issues within that need to be taken seriously and hampers people's abilities to think and express themselves freely. Michael ends the book by giving examples of places around the world that have made progressive progress and encouraging people to learn from one another. He reminds us we can't be dignified as humans while leaving one group behind. We're all in this together. Whether we all get out of it together is yet to be determined. I believe if we work together, we will see a better future. Further thoughts. These aren't meant to be prescriptions on how others should think. These are just some thoughts that came to mind and I wanted to share to spark conversation and further analysis. Michael focused a lot on the right's obsession with intelligence. But what is intelligence? How many of my fellow autists out there have heard this phrase applied towards you? How can someone so smart do something so stupid? When I was in grade 5 and 6, I was struggling in a couple subjects. My mom noticed my tendency to reverse things, including to me being dyslexic. So she insisted the school have my intelligence tested. It showed I was above average. But since I would spell ball with a D instead of a B, my classmates teased me for being stupid, and I was put into special ed. A person can be brilliant in a few subjects, but clueless in others. So does that make them a smart person or a stupid person? Intelligence is a social construct, in the same sense as gender is a social construct. You know those men who love to say it's like, oh, I know what a woman is because that's who I'm attracted to. Well, I'm attracted to intelligence, and I've never been attracted to anyone on the right. Methods for testing intelligence were designed by people with agendas, in that they wanted to be labeled as intelligent. People in positions of power got to determine what qualifies as valuable knowledge. Once they decided what was important, they based education on that. The right has latched onto this. They buy credentials from prestigious universities or claim to be of superior intellect because they need it to legitimize how they earned their status. Just because a person went to Harvard doesn't mean they earned their degree. They use memorized facts and talking points to demonstrate their giant brains. Thinking creatively or applying their knowledge in rational ways, not a strong point of theirs. In fact, they reject logic if it doesn't suit their needs. Without that label of intelligence, they're incredibly unremarkable people. But they use the fact they have a degree of being smart in one area as authority to speak on issues they've never studied. After they've been established as an intellect, educational institutes, believing they're legit, go to them for training videos or speaking engagements, again, even for things they know nothing about. These institutes end up exposing students to right-wing talking points, which encourage people to both sides and question things like slavery, human rights, even the Holocaust. They're rewriting history to strengthen their illusion of intelligence and to promote white supremacy. It's not just educational institutes that call on these fake intellectuals. Right-wing government officials purposely bring them in to testify on committees to legitimize their horrible repressive views. Policies have been influenced by bigoted people who have no expertise in the subject. The people in power on the right must convince other people of their superior intellect to maintain their status, to show they're deserving of what they have, while other people, other countries, well, they deserve to be ruled over and controlled because they aren't smart enough to do it themselves, thus enforcing the patriarchy and white supremacy. To me, people are intelligent if they can think critically and accept new information. You don't need to be an expert in anything to be an intelligent person, and not being intelligent doesn't make you any less of a person. It's not a status that makes one superior over the other. People are made up of many traits and abilities. Different expressions of intelligence are among the possibilities. Thought experiments are useless. They're fun to talk about around the dinner table, but they don't translate into reality. Let's take the modern version of the trolley example. There's 100 people tied to the track and the trolley is barreling down. It's up to you to pull the lever to divert the trolley to the other track, which only has a few people tied down. What do? Saving 100 lives at the cost of a few lives may seem worth it. But what if in those few lives, they're your children? What if in the 100 lives, somebody's going to grow up to be a mass murderer? What if? A simple scenario can't encompass all the variables at play. The age of the people, the gender, do you know them? Which can nullify the thought experiment as a test for practice values. In reality, we don't control all the variables, and until you're confronted with a situation, you have no idea how you'll react. Emotions, fear, panic, anger interfere with any values you think you have while sitting safely around a dining room table. So they can never be a true test of values. Thought experiments and hypotheticals are often used by disingenuous people not to test theories, but to substantiate predetermined outcomes. Like Tim Pool demanding to know from his left-wing guests if they believe a person should be allowed to have an abortion in the 8th month. If he doesn't like your answer, he'll add something else to make it so hyper-specific that there's a 1% chance it will take place in all of humanity. But that's what the right does. To prove their solutions are the correct calculations deduced by their superior genius, they manipulate hypotheticals, truths, realities, until the only logical answer is, the meteorite that wiped out the dinosaurs should have never hit. Policies should never be influenced by hyper-specific scenarios. Don't bother engaging with people who are bringing these to the table in bad faith. What is the culture we're fighting over? We're fighting over influence of the culture ego. Okay, so I'm about as well versed with psychological theory as I am with political theory. And I know for everything I've been talking about, I'm way out of my league. But you can't stop watching because I'm just so damn adorable. In psychoanalytical theory, you have the id, ego, and superego. I find them to be useful framing devices when talking about culture in the general sense. Cultural id, the human nature part of culture. Culture ego, where we land when it comes to left-right leaning politics that we can control through policy. Cultural superego, the people in positions of power and influence. Is this a perfect analogy? I don't know, probably not. Take it or leave it, I find it useful. The culture ego is currently left of center. Right-wingers in the superego are trying to pull the ego backwards to match their stated, but rarely practiced, sense of morality. The next iteration of the IDW. Recent conflicts within the left have been causing real-world harm. At the core of it are leftists claiming they're just stating their opinion and others are overreacting and making drama out of nothing. Real concerns, real issues are being brushed aside as leftist infighting. You see, this is where that issue of labeling everything as leftist infighting becomes problematic. Let's break down the different kinds of opinions. Neutral opinions. They don't have an effect on anyone. It's things like, which is better, the Marvel Cinematic Universe or DC's attempt to make one? Or it could be a person's opinion on their favorite sports team. Productive opinions. Things that affect you. This can range from which is better, chocolate or vanilla ice cream. It's cookie dough because it's something you'll be eating, to things like healthcare, unions, traffic laws, because those are things you'll be participating in. Selfish opinions. When a person makes an issue about them. Examples. I say trans women shouldn't be allowed to participate in women's sports. Even though I'm not trans, I don't do sports, and I have no understanding of what HRT does. I say children shouldn't be exposed to CRT or LGBTQ plus ideology, even though I don't have kids. I say sex should only be allowed between cis-het married couples when they're trying to procreate, and that the lights must be off to hide the shame on their faces, even though I'm not married and no one wants to have sex with me. Wait, what? And there's the twist. Productive opinions affect you. Selfish opinions affect others. And while we all have these kinds of opinions, they're often loudly, publicly expressed by people in the superego, like this. Neutral opinions, center liberal thought. Productive opinions, progressive thought. Selfish opinions, right-wing thought. Should people be loudly, publicly expressing their opinions about things they have no personal involvement with when it has the potential to affect policy or cause harm to others? No. I bring up the issue of opinions because I've been seeing a trend. The IDW has run its course. The people involved with the IDW used it to build their platforms, or they faded from public view. The next step is laying stepping stones, a way to legitimize their views with people on the left so they can pacify people while they continue their goal of taking and keeping power. The more accommodating people on the left are to opinions on the right, the easier it is for the right to convince people. Fascism, there's nuance, it's not all bad. And they can prove it because after all, these people on the left, they agree with their takes, that not everyone is deserving of basic human dignity. A handful of influential people who are established on the left have been loudly, publicly expressing selfish opinions. Some have made full turns to the right, and some are expressing just one opinion here or there. But every little bit helps to bolster right-wing ideology. These leftists are acting like intermediaries, directing people to the right. I guess you could say they're the new IDW. Intermediary, directing, wingnuts. The saddest thing is who some of these leftists are. Brianna Joy Gray, Ben Burgess. Michael spoke positively about them in his book and in life. When people write books like this, they quite often get people who, they're in the same field as them, people that they respect, to read the book and write little reviews. I think that's what they're called, little reviews, to go on the back and in the cover to, encourage people to pick up the book and read it. And there's one in here from Glenn Greenwald, and actually over here, right there. Anna Kasparian. Hey there. Hey, you four that I just mentioned. What are you doing? Like, really, what are you doing? All of you had the privilege of knowing Michael far better than I ever will. I want you to be honest with yourselves. Would he be proud of the person you become? Would he even respect you anymore? Again, I'm not going to get into it in this video. If you want to know more about my thoughts on why and how these people became part of the new IDW, let me know in the comments section. What would Michael say? I hear that a lot. Sometimes people just want to hear one of his funny impressions respond to a comment. Sometimes people wish they could get his insight on current events. He left behind a legacy and his own stepping stones, leading us to a cosmopolitan way of thinking. He was an intermediary for many of us getting into progressive politics. Now that I've said my piece about the new IDW, it's important going forward not to assume what Michael would say. We will never know what his opinion would be on the events of today. Don't try to twist his message to validate a talking point you want to be correct. Use what he taught to enhance your beliefs or see if it causes you to re-examine them. It's on us to take what we've learned and apply it to the events of today, to use it to think critically and take in new information. Something I put in my very first video, please don't go back and watch it. It is terrible. It's so terrible. But it is the way that I see it. Greed, ego, superstition, and ignorance are destroying the world. It will take empathy, humility, compassion, and knowledge based in science to save it. We have to dig to the root of the problem if we ever want to move forward. After everything I've learned, yeah, I think it holds up. Michael was unique in his abilities and thoughts. To many, he was a moral compass. It's up to us to help each other find direction. We do this by supporting and uplifting one another. No one person will ever be able to fill the void he left. So it's a good thing there's plenty of us. Something I feel he was trying to do in life was to actively pull the culture ego to the left, to start fighting back, encouraging people to get involved and to do things to make a difference, to stop being passive participants of a fascistic takeover. Even though he's no longer here, his teachings are continuing that goal. I really wish I had the chance to connect with Michael in life. I hope you all enjoyed my review, and I hope what I presented gives justice to who he was. Okay, so I know I said people shouldn't speak for him, but I know he would be really disappointed in me right now if I didn't say, I have a Patreon account. Sign up and help support my content, or you can purchase something from my wish list. Don't forget, I'm joining the Letterhack live on his channel for a talkback and discussion about this video. If my channel has been monetized by the time of this premiere, I'll answer any super chats I got in the Letterhack's live stream. Link is in the chat and in the description box. You can find me on all of these social media accounts. If you're watching this in the future, some of these may not exist anymore, and I may have had to sign up for other platforms. Look for Sandy Lofus and LeftoftheBox. Speaking of Sandy Lofus, that's a website you should go check out. It's for my art stuff. I have pictures of the drawings I did of Michael on there. I'm sure it will impress you. It certainly impressed me when I did them. Hit buttons and in the comments, let me know what your favorite thing about Michael was. To finish this video, I'll leave you with this.
I'll wrap this up, and I will wish each and every one of you all my very best. Please treat yourselves well, treat each other better, treat each other well, treat yourself better, and log off if you can. And there will be books that TMBS is self-publishing that I will do audio versions of. We're doing a TMBS guide to key concepts like internationalism and anti-essentialism. And we're also doing a TMBS guide on post-colonialism in Africa with the great Milton Alamati. Thank you, patron. All right, guys. Much love to all of you. Stay safe. Hit the like button on the way out. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. All that stuff. Go to patreon.com/TMBS. And most importantly, stay safe, stay strong, be well. Much love, people.